Hey there. Quick question before we start. Have you ever thought about how weird it is that the entire modern world runs on a shiny metal most people only associate with grandma's cutlery and vampire movies? Because that metal might quietly be holding the global economy together right now. Let me introduce you to silver. Not the jewelry version, not the "I'll buy it when inflation hits" version. I mean the everything you touch secretly needs this version. And now imagine this. China, the country that makes a terrifying amount of the stuff your life depends on, decides one morning to say, yeah, we're not really selling much of this anymore. That's it. And suddenly, your phone, your car, your solar panels, your data centers, and half the global tech industry start sweating. Let me explain why this matters without making your brain feel like it's doing taxes. Think of the global economy like a giant group project. Everyone's supposed to contribute, but there's always that one guy who ends up doing most of the work. In this case, that guy is China. Over the past few decades, China didn't just become the world's factory, they became the world's materials manager. Rare earths, critical metals, refining, processing, stuff that sounds boring until you realize, if they stop shipping, things stop working. And silver? Silver's one of those materials. Not in a nice-to-have way, in a your civilization runs on this way. Now zoom out for a second. The world is already tense. Countries are in debt up to their eyeballs, the US dollar is strong but also suspiciously fragile. Governments keep borrowing, central banks keep printing, everyone's pretending this is normal. And whenever things start feeling shaky like that, something interesting happens. People start running toward real stuff. Gold, silver, hard assets. That's not optimism, that's fear in a nice suit. Some analysts are even saying this setup, this mix of debt, geopolitics, supply chains, and money printing could end up being worse than 2008. Which is comforting in a we survived one apocalypse, what's another kind of way. Now, here's where things get spicy. Starting January 1st, China quietly rolled out new rules around silver exports. Nothing flashy, no "we ban silver exports" headline, just licensing. Meaning, if you want silver out of China, you now need permission. And here's the problem. China doesn't just produce silver, they refine it, process it, turn it into the usable form the world actually needs. Depending on how you measure it, China controls somewhere between 60 and 70% of global silver production and refining capacity. That's not influence, that's leverage. It's like being the only person in town who knows how to bake bread, and also owning the oven. So now China can look at its own economy and say, do we need this silver at home? Do our EV factories need it? Do our solar manufacturers need it? Do our data centers need it? And if the answer is yes, everyone else waits. That's what licensing power really means. Not banning, prioritizing. Now, here's where most people get confused. They hear silver and think, oh, like gold, a shiny investment thing. Nope. Gold mostly just sits there, in vaults, looking important. Silver gets used. Silver is the most conductive metal on Earth, which is a fancy way of saying electricity loves it. If electricity were a person, silver would be its favorite Uber driver. And once silver gets used in electronics, solar panels, batteries, and circuits, it's gone, consumed. That's a huge difference. Gold is recyclable forever. Silver? A lot of it ends up scattered across tiny components, too expensive or impractical to recover. So every year, industrial demand literally destroys part of the supply. Permanent supply loss. Now let me show you how deep this rabbit hole goes. Take a normal day in your life. You wake up, check your phone. That phone uses silver. You hop in a car or an Uber. Silver. You use appliances. Silver. Solar panels? Loaded with silver. EVs? More silver than regular cars. 5G towers, data centers, AI servers, silver. It's everywhere, but invisibly. And here's the kicker. About half of all silver produced today is used for industrial purposes. Global silver demand is roughly 1.24 billion ounces per year. Global supply? About 1 billion ounces. That's not a shortage, that's a structural gap. And demand isn't slowing down. EV adoption is rising, solar installations are exploding, AI computing is eating electricity like it's training for a buffet competition. And then there's solid-state batteries, the ones promising 700-mile ranges. Guess what they need? Yep, more silver. Now you might be thinking, okay, but if silver is so important, why don't we just mine more? Excellent question. And this is where Bob enters the story. Bob is a miner. Bob doesn't mine silver on purpose. Why? Because about 75 to 80% of silver isn't mined directly. It's a byproduct. Silver mostly comes out on mining copper, lead, and zinc. So unless demand for those metals rises, silver supply doesn't magically increase. Only about 20% of silver comes from primary silver mines. And those mines, they're expensive, slow, politically messy, environmentally regulated. From discovery to production can take 12 to 15 years. That's not a supply response. That's a geological shrug. So supply is basically stuck, demand is rising, and China controls a massive chunk of the flow. Now add one more layer of chaos. Silver prices in China are currently higher than in Western markets, which means traders are doing what traders always do. They're buying silver in places like London and New York and shipping it to China. This is called arbitrage. So while China tightens export rules, silver is physically leaving Western vaults. That's not great timing. Manufacturers are already feeling this. Electronics companies are scrambling, solar producers are testing substitutions like copper. But copper isn't as conductive, so performance drops, which means either products get worse or prices go up. And guess who pays? Yep, you. Even Elon Musk, who doesn't usually panic publicly, has warned about silver shortages. Estimates suggest a potential shortfall of 100 to 250 million ounces. Now let's talk about something slightly uncomfortable: paper silver. A lot of investors don't own physical silver. They own claims, ETFs, contracts, IOUs. Some estimates suggest that for every ounce of physical silver, there are hundreds of paper claims, ratios as high as 300 to 1. Meaning if everyone suddenly asked for delivery, there wouldn't be enough silver to go around, which could force financial institutions to buy physical silver at any price. Now, take a breath, because this isn't a straight-line story. China isn't doing this because they hate the world. They're doing it because they're building the future. They dominate solar manufacturing, EV production, energy infrastructure. Silver is a strategic input. Why export it cheaply when you'll need it domestically? This is about leverage, security, control. And markets are starting to notice. Traders are paying premiums just to get immediate delivery. Spot prices are rising. Physical and paper markets are drifting apart. This doesn't mean silver goes up forever. Silver is volatile, violently volatile. It spikes, it crashes, it gives people emotional whiplash. And historically, it's not even great at preserving purchasing power long-term, which makes the current moment so strange, because silver isn't being driven by investment hype alone anymore. It's being driven by necessity. And once a metal becomes necessary, the rules change. Because now the question isn't, is silver a good trade? It's, what happens if the world can't function without it and supply can't keep up? And right now, silver is walking into that phase where attention is rising fast. Silver has quietly become a bottleneck. Electrification doesn't work without it. AI infrastructure doesn't scale without it. Energy transition slows without it. And bottlenecks behave differently than investments. When demand spikes, you don't get a polite price increase. You get scrambling, hoarding, political pressure, substitution experiments that don't quite work. Which brings us back to inflation, because inflation isn't always about money printing. Sometimes it's about physics. If supply chains stretch and snap, consumers feel it. This is how a silver shortage quietly shows up in your electricity bill, your phone price, your car cost, and your "why is everything more expensive now" conversations. Silver ETFs exploded in popularity because they made silver easy. But ETFs come with a promise. There's metal behind this. And when that promise meets a physical shortage, things get awkward. Because paper can multiply infinitely, metal can't. If even a small percentage of investors suddenly decide, actually, I want the real thing, the system feels it immediately. That's where the short squeeze risk lives. Silver is not a straight-line bet. It never has been. It spikes, it collapses, it moves faster than emotions can keep up. Historically, silver has been terrible at being boring, which is why it's dangerous to fall in love with it. Silver works best as a supporting character, not the hero. A hedge, a small speculative position, a complement to gold, equities, and cash, not your life savings. Because even in strong secular trends, silver can drop 30–40% and make you question every decision you've ever made. Now look ahead. 2025 looks strong. Momentum is there. Structural demand is real. But markets don't move on headlines forever. By 2026, uncertainty creeps in. Substitutions improve. Manufacturing cycles change. And once risks are priced in, markets move on. That doesn't mean silver becomes irrelevant. It means the narrative shifts. Which brings us to the real question. Not will silver go up next month, but will silver remain essential 5 to 10 years from now? Because if the answer is yes, then volatility doesn't kill the story. It is the story. But if substitutes genuinely replace silver at scale, if technology finds a workaround, if demand plateaus, then the entire thesis changes. And that's why attention matters so much. Peak excitement often shows up right before volatility explodes. Media coverage can be a contrarian indicator. FOMO is not a strategy, and linear thinking gets punished in non-linear markets. So the smart approach isn't hype, it's informed caution. Understanding why silver matters without assuming it owes you anything. Which brings us here. So in conclusion, if China slows or restricts silver exports, the impact isn't limited to investors or metal traders. It hits manufacturing, technology, energy, inflation, supply chains. Silver isn't just a shiny thing anymore. It's a structural input holding up modern systems. That gives it long-term importance and extreme short-term volatility. The opportunity isn't in guessing the next price move, it's in understanding why this metal suddenly matters so much and how that changes the rules. If you want me to make other videos explaining these topics, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.